This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Future State.
Hello and welcome to the Batman Universe Comic Podcast, Season 13, Episode 3. This is our Future State 4-part arc where we cover all of the Batman Universe releases for the Future State event, as our awesome introduction created by Steph shows. Speaking of which, I have with me my regular hosts Steph and Theo.
Hello.
No, hello.
I did want to start us off with a mention of, Steph, do you remember that great story, Beasts of Burden, back at the middle of Tom King's run, where he had the fairy tale of the fox getting everyone to kill themselves so he could eat them?
In the pit?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, can't forget about that.
So I spent the last week reading all 150 issues of Fables, which were drawn by the artist who did that fairy tale for Tom King, Mark Buckingham.
Ooh.
And I just wanted to give my highest recommendation to that series because it is awesome and the art is fantastic.
Were there a lot of creatures eating other creatures?
There were. It is not a Disney fairy tale. It is about fairy tales of the old style where witches eat children and wolves eat everyone.
Oh, that's fine.
But I give that a really high recommendation. I actually just got the first volume in Compendium, which is sort of like a paperback omnibus, and it was a really good deal. So definitely check that out on Amazon. Fables, great Vertigo series from about 2003 to 2015 is when it ended. So a really long series. We have a bit of comic news. First is that Future State is continuing past February. So in addition to the issue Superman vs. Imperious Lex, which is going to wrap up at the end of March, we're going to have a new series starting in May called Future State Gotham. And that looks like it's going to have sort of rotating story arcs. The first one's going to be about Red Hood, written by Josh Williamson and drawn by the guy who is drawing the Red Hood story for Williamson in the backups of Dark Detective 2 and 4. So clearly that's going to be a continuation of that story. Interestingly, this is going to be a black and white series. It's not going to have colors, and I wonder if that's because production is really rushed. Usually they have about 5 to 6 months, and this one they're clearly giving themselves only 3 months for production based on the popularity of Future State. So what do you think about the idea of Future State Gotham? They say that in the solicitation, all of the Batman characters that we see in Future State are going to show up, not just Red Hood.
Well, I mean, first off, it would have been nice if some of the stories that got a little shortchanged on the first run got maybe a little extended time or expansion of their stories. But I'm enjoying the universe enough that I would read something, especially for Red Hood, because Red Hood's story seems a little short. So I'd be interested in finding out more about Jason and what he's up to. It's a little weird that Red Hood is in black and white, but whatever.
It's going to be interesting seeing this storyline continue with Jason basically being a bounty hunter for the magistrate. Not crazy about the idea now, so I'm not certain how I'll feel about it once the series start, but we'll see how it goes.
I view this sort of as replacing Batman Beyond. I feel like DC kind of manipulated and kept the Batman Beyond concept going too long and into situations that I don't think worked, especially with Future's End. I think it got back on track a bit with what Jurgens did during the Rebirth run, but I think that we've had just like a couple hundred issues of Batman Beyond at this point, and I think a new future exploration would be helpful. And I think that Future State, I kind of like that we got in on the ground floor, that we're viewing Future State from the beginning, like a kid who started watching Batman Beyond in the late 90s would have started, and their continuations through comics would be something that they get to see grow from something they experienced as it first came out. I didn't experience that cartoon as it came out, but I have, of course, read Future State, so this kind of feels like a cool expansion of the concept of future Batman in a continuing context. I am concerned about the black and white thing. I wonder if that will have any effect on sales.
As long as they have the right amount, the proper amount and usage of shading, I will probably be okay with that. One of the things that I've had issues with this new volume of Black and White that's been out, especially in the first issue, was that it seemed like it was stories that was just drawn and inked and prepped for colors instead of a true black and white comic. So if they're rushing a book that should have colors to it just to put it out there, we'll see that rather quickly, and it'll be quite noticeable. Agreed. But I mean, if it has the proper amount of shading, I would be okay with that.
I think that's a really good observation. I think that if something is created for the black and white medium, it can be just as gorgeous as a colored art. But I wonder if the wider audience will have that consciously in their minds or not. Because I think there is a reason they use color. I think it does tend to sell better. So I guess we'll see if that holds true for Gotham. I think that Gotham is the right way to go if you're going to do black and white, because there's something about Batman that really has the atmosphere of a black and white film, like an old detective story, Maltese Falcon, or Big Sleep,
Noir.
The film noir. We also got a ton of spoilers. Joshua Williamson's done a lot of interviews in the last couple of weeks, and he mentioned that the Batman Urban Legends anthology series is going to feature Tim, Steph, and Cass. So we don't have any announcement of a Batgirls title, unfortunately, but we are going to get some stories from them in the Urban Legends. Our guess is currently that they'll show up around June or July, but maybe we'll get lucky and we'll see them starting in May, because May solicitations should drop at the end of this week, because DC is dropping news about a new comic title every day, it seems.
Or not, because after that first story, I'm still not crazy about what they did with Batgirl. So it's kind of like what you said in the last episode when we discussed it. I'm not sure if I would be crazy about the book. I'll probably still buy it, but I don't know if I would be crazy about it with the current creative team. So if they announce it with a new creative team, I'll be okay with that. But and we'll see how the second part turns out with the next issue of Batman.
I totally agree. If they announce it with the same creative team, or worse, if they announce it with the same creative team as Batgirl from Castellucci, I'm just not going to be excited about that. But hopefully DC will give us some new voices on Cass and Steph and Babs that won't leave us frustrated. We had a new series drop digitally first on DC Universe called Let Them Live. And this is very interesting because it's actually a repackaging. They're going to give like a new 2 to 3 page framing story. But the rest of the issue is going to be what they call inventory issues, which are issues that they commissioned and they paid for, so they're fully done, but they never published them, either because they were standalones and they wanted to keep momentum going, or they didn't quite fit in continuity, so they had to trim them and have a new issue come in. I think this is good because obviously they've already paid for these issues, and getting to see them is fun, even if they're necessarily slightly out of continuity because of not being published in sequence. What do you think about that? I know, Theo, you subscribe to DCU Infinite.
Yeah, I'm actually sitting here now scrolling through the pages on the app, on my tablet. The art looks great. I'll probably have more, with the next episode after I sit down and give it a read. But this art looks very colorful. It looks like it could be something for all ages, but I don't necessarily think it is. But again, this is without me, reading the context and just looking at the art right now. But it's always good to see Ambush Bug. So I don't know if he's going to be a focus of the story every issue or not.
I think he's going to be in the framing stories every issue. So
Gotcha.
That'll be fun. We have another new character announced for Batman number 108 out in May. Written by James Tynion, art by Jorge Jimenez. The character's name is Miracle Molly. She's part of a group called the Unsanity Collective, and they're trying to get some excitement for this character by commissioning an art germ cover, just like they commissioned one for Clown Hunter and Punchline. And I think they probably did some for Ghostmaker too. I was mentioning on the Discord that I felt that it took a while for Tynion to find the right approach for Punchline, Ghostmaker, and Clown Hunter. I think he has found them, and I am actually excited for all three now, but it took a little while, and I'm kind of hoping that he hits Miracle Molly really hard with a really splashy and exciting introduction in issue 108 that gives us a sense of who she is and makes us want to know more.
Wait, hold up, cut, stop. Wait a minute. So we just jump out and give us everything and just hit the floor running with Molly, but we got to have a build for Tim with the next Batman. What's up with that?
That's an excellent question, and I do think that you do point out something there. And I would say that there's a couple different things at play in my wish that we had a bit more explanation of Tim Fox rather than Miracle Molly. Now, the first thing is that Miracle Molly she's going to be sort of a villain antagonist, and I think that a story that has an established protagonist of Batman can take a bit more time to introduce a new main heroic character, like a new Batman. And I think that, especially for someone who's taking a mantle as big as Tim Fox is, it's good for us to know and care about them and really see their motivations, because Bruce Wayne's motivations for being Batman are so simple and iconic. They're so universal. And all of the other Batman have had at least several months of introduction, if not, 80 years, like Jim Gordon and Dick Grayson, before they actually took on that mantle. I also think that the story we've been introduced to Tim Fox's Batman has just been a very small story. It's been kind of a everyday murder investigation in the backdrop of Future State. Whereas I think if you're introducing a new Batman, you should really give them a Batman Begins style story where he faces really huge odds and makes a huge victory. And it's quite possible that he scores some kind of huge victory in issue 4 of the next Batman, but it doesn't seem to be building to one. It seems to be building to a small personal victory. And while I think that's a great story in itself, I think introducing a new Batman needs something bigger and needs more context and motivation. So that's kind of why I think it's okay to say, yeah, I really want Molly to get a big story right away and drop us in without context and just really give us the character right away. But I think that it would have been good to get to know Tim Fox's backstory. And as I said, I think it would have been good to have this Second Son miniseries that we're going to get starting in September, leading into Future State. So we would have had that sense of, oh, this is Tim, this is motivation. I'm really excited to see him take the mantle instead of, I don't know why Tim is taking the mantle. So that's kind of my reasoning. But it is an inconsistency, so well spotted.
I just had to point that out.
Also, does anyone else get the impression that she watched Back to the Future 2 one too many times? That's the only thing I can think when I look at her outfit.
Well, I don't know about Miracle Molly watching the movie. I think Jorge Jimenez very well might have watched Back to the Future too many times. All right. So that's all the news that I'm aware of for our upcoming stuff. There is going to be solicitations at the end of the week, so we'll have a lot to talk about on our next episode, the finale of Future State. So definitely tune in for that. But for now, let's get to our reviews, starting with The Next Batman number 3.
Story 1, The Next Batman, written by John Ridley, art by Laura Braga. Batman stands between the parents he captured for the murder and magistrate troops. He's given himself up, and he asks the troops to not hurt the couple. The troops, however, are ordered to kill everyone. Expecting this, Batman tosses a mini EMP device that takes out the magistrate drones. He then takes out the cybers before turning his attention to the magistrate foot soldiers. He then makes his getaway with the couple in tow. Back at magistrate headquarters, Captain Stantz is trying to explain to Peacekeeper 1 how he and his team failed to take Batman down. Peacekeeper 1 berates the soldier before ordering him and his team to get back out and to find Batman without failure. As the troop of private soldiers leave, Stantz states that he wants to be the one to kill Batman himself. While this is going on, Commissioner Montoya is warning her detectives to not agitate the peacekeepers while they're attempting to solve the murder. With regards to Batman, she reminds them that the mayor's shoot-to-kill order applies to them as well if the peacekeepers find them siding with the fugitive Cape Crusader. At an abandoned church, Batman and the couple are settling in. They use a mini flare to cauterize the wound in Batman's side. They notice other scars on his body, which Jace claims he received from his previous life. Batman tells the couple that they need to move soon if they want to make it through the night. While this is going on, the Fox family appear to be continuing their odds at each other. Tanya and Lucas argue over Wayne Enterprises' role in supplying weaponry to the city and the magistrate, and how the shoot-to-kill order is making her job harder as she tries to defend the city in court. Lucius suggests that she steps back and lets someone else handle the case if she's unable to get the job done. Their daughter Tiffany overhears the argument and questions her mother on why she's okay with the shoot-on-sight law. Tanya attempts to explain to her daughter that the situation is different, but Tiffany wants nothing to do with it, leaving to find Luke. She finds him working out and questions whether or not he's the new Batman. He assures her that he isn't. They discuss the issues going on with their family and Tiff's thoughts on the new Batman. Luke assures her that if the new Batman is willing to do what he's doing, he's a good person. Batman makes a call to Detective Chubb at the GCPD. He asks her for protection for the couple who killed Jasewski. He wants protection for them until they're able to go to trial, and he explains that there's more to their story than just a cold-blooded murder. He appeals to Chubb's hatred of the magistrate and the shoot-to-kill law. Chubb agrees to meet them for an exchange at City Hall. But before Batman can round up the couple to go to City Hall, Eric, the husband, attacks him. He wraps a cord around Jason's neck and begins to choke him. Eric is no longer worried about getting caught. The magistrate will give him a break for killing Batman.
So this is our third of 4 issues in this story. What do you think we learned anything new about Luke in this as Batman? Sorry, not Luke. Tim or Jace as Batman.
Well, he's not out to work by himself. He's had a partner that we don't really know on the line, but he's also very willing to work with the police as long as they aren't trying to kill him. So I think that's pretty good. I think that's still showing a respect for the law, or at least what's left of it, which I'm not always sure Batman had. Batman was more, you work with me or else we don't work together. Whereas this Jace seems to be more like, I'm more than happy to work within your rules. Just don't, shoot me on sight.
I'm going to kind of follow back on what Ian mentioned earlier with regards to Jace being a different type of Batman. And I think what we see in this issue is exactly that. I mean, when you consider the scars he's got in a previous life, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I actually am really curious about that previous life, whether he's in the military or a spy.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder whether or not that different life, he could not have been Batman. You know what I mean? What type of person was he at that point? So I am definitely interested in seeing more about this previous life of Jason and how that may have led him to becoming Batman and picking up the mantle.
Absolutely. I am really curious about those scars and how he acquired the skills, because he clearly is competent. Even if he's, kind of a new Batman, we see him learning things and learning what doesn't work, as we saw in something like Batman Year One, or, in the first parts of Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated saga. Batman and Robin, where Dick was taking on the mantle of Batman. I really like the way Ridley sets up this moral dilemma of the couple who killed the killer of their daughter. The one problem is I don't know if we're supposed to believe that the couple really killed the right person. Our next Batman doesn't work the case from that angle. He doesn't investigate whether this man really was a child abductor and murderer. And so it feels like that kind of thing kind of needed maybe an additional issue or two, where he could have done the detective work, or his partner on the earpiece could have, like his burner phones could have, run down more information on whether or not the couple were in fact correct, or if they just killed the wrong person to move on from their grief. So I like where Ridley's taking it, but I feel like it's missing a bit. And I think Theo's mentioned that this was going to be a longer event with 5G, and we've been hearing about John Ridley doing Batman for like a year at this point. So I wonder if they didn't change the number of issues that we were going to get, because that seems a bit odd with so much lead time.
Just a whole lot is missing.
Yeah,
but you can say that not just about what we're getting with the Batman books, but a lot of Future State is that way. So it just makes me wonder, why not just go ahead and create a new universe to get the whole story out there? You know what I mean? Because it's just
definitely
okay. Why is it this way? What was the final straw in Nakano? Selling out to the magistrate. There's just a lot of missing pieces, and I know we're going to get a lot of it in Second Son, but like someone said, a wise person, it would have been nice to get a build.
I wish I knew that wide person. It sounds like they might have some good insight sometimes. I think that the art just felt a little less graceful this time than last time. I think that the first issue, of course, I'm much more of a Darrington fan than a Braga fan, but that's not to say that I don't enjoy Braga's art. But this issue felt a little less graceful for some reason, just the way that the action worked and the characters interacted.
I just think you're down because it's not Darrington.
I'm not going to deny that I'm down because it's not Darrington. I really am kind of irritated that they did this to us.
I think it was fine.
Yeah, I think the art was fine. But again, it goes back to what I said either in the last episode or the episode before that. This is the problem when you go and you get A-list artists, who can't always meet these deadlines because they're doing their own thing. And I mean, when you consider all the stuff that Nick Darrington has done, to have him on a book is going to come with the price. And I'm pretty sure AT&T has given DC some pretty clear directive that, hey, we need to cut costs where we can. So yeah, we can get Nick Darrington for one issue. But we're not going to get them for all four. I mean, just think if we'll ever see Jim Lee on a DC book again.
I'm okay with not seeing Jim Lee on a DC book again unless he's doing covers. I mean, every DC book he's on has insane delays.
Exactly.
All right. The one last question I wanted to ask about this is, what do you think about the scene between Luke and Tiffany Fox discussing Batman and vigilantes and masks? How did that strike you in the comic?
Well, so I just been kind of wondering, like seeing Lucius and Tanya talk, you kind of feel like you're taking crazy pills or you're being gaslit or something. It's like, how can these two people that in the past have seemed morally upright and on Batman's side, well, I don't know Tanya that well, but just I kind of assume, suddenly be taking these completely different stances and they're all just crazy. And then you've got the kids who are like, yeah, no, mom and dad are crazy. So I liked seeing Tiffany just because it kind of made me feel less crazy. Like, okay, there are still sane people in this universe. and the adults are not one of them. And it is interesting seeing Luke being so cold to Jace, but then, saying that Batman's all right. It's like, oh, well, you don't know. You're being mean to your brother. You shouldn't be mean to your brother. But
well, again, it kind of goes back to what that other life may have been, or what Luke thinks that other life may have been, because it's obvious that other life took Tim away from the family and gave back Jace. But and I've been saying it from the first issue. This is a family that's really torn right now, and again, it leads to the question of what could have happened to Tam that would tear the Fox family apart the way it has. And I'm almost wondering, and again, this is just based on what I can remember of Tam's history, I'm wondering if at some point between the end of Joker War and what we're seeing now in Future State, did Tam pick up a mask? Because I know at one point she was temporarily a Batgirl at one point. Was she not in a different universe?
Yes, she was in the 5 years later Future's End universe.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if at some point between Joker War and Future State, Tam picked up a mask and put on a mask, and something happened that led to her being in the state that she's in now. And this is what has caused Tanya and Lucius to flip the way they have. But it's something that had to have been devastating, considering the Fox family's history with the masked vigilantes.
I tend to agree. I think that it really had some interesting stuff. Now, I've mentioned this a couple times that I am kind of default on Luke's side just because I've liked him for quite a long time. And I don't know Tim or Jace, and I really wish we knew why he was calling himself Jace and what his background is and what his side of the story is. But we'll get into some interesting stuff with where Luke is coming from and what he's willing to do in the Dark Detective Grifters backup story. So I would like to move to our next Batman story, which is Outsiders #2.
Outsiders, written by Brandon Thomas, art by Sumit Kumar. As Duke Thomas speaks to the Gothamites he recently helped escape from Gotham, explaining his mission to help save the city, Katana speaks with Black Lightning about his new form and his role in figuring out how something wasn't right with the people with Duke. As he prepares to leave, Duke gives the safe house occupants some final instructions on remaining safe until the next leg of their escape begins with someone else. As Duke leaves, he reaches out to Katana, who has been waiting to hear from him. Something isn't feeling right. Things that occurred on the bridge just seemed a little bit too easy. Katana tells him of Jefferson's warning about the magistrate plant, prompting Duke to check the sensors of tracers he secretly planted on the 3 refugees. One of them is gone. As he realizes what is happening, one of the 3 refugees, the young male, lands in front of him, equipped with upgrades from the magistrate. They begin to battle. Back at Katana's hideout, Tatsu and Jefferson are listening in and prepping to provide assistance. Before heading out, Jefferson transforms himself into an electrified blade. On Trigate Bridge, a chase is ensuing as the outsiders attempt to capture the mole, Agent Cullen, who is now trying to make it back into Magistrate territory. Magistrate troops, led by Caliber, are making their way to assist him. As they attempt to get away, Katana and Black Lightning, still in the form of the sword, catch them and destroy the getaway vehicle. As Tatsu staggers to her feet, she realizes that Caliber has the Soul Taker, preparing to break it. Black Lightning intercedes, flattening Caliber with multiple lightning blasts. After tying up the magistrate goons, Duke heads to the Gotham border. He knows someone who may be able to help Black Lightning. As he reaches the other side, magistrate soldiers orders him to stop. They draw their weapons. Little do they know that Duke is not alone.
So, Outsiders. That final reveal of Jefferson in his Black Lightning form standing behind Duke is jaw-dropping.
That was awesome.
I know
That
we've
was
had
so
our
cool.
criticisms, but how do we think about this version of Duke?
I love this version of Duke. I would read this book. If this is what Outsiders had been, I would not have dropped it after the second issue.
Exactly. And again, everyone who knows me knows that I'm not a Duke Thomas fan. And the primary reason is because no one seems to have been able to give him any type of voice thing. And Brandon does it. He does it almost perfectly. And I could. This is the Outsiders book. This is a Duke Thomas that I could read. Outside of Duke Thomas in the White Knight universe, this is the Duke Thomas that DC needs. And if they ever want to continue to see this character flourish, they need someone like Brandon Thomas to continue giving him that voice, because it doesn't seem like anybody else can do it, including the person who created him. But yeah,
Well,
I
think that we're
absolutely
in real luck, because there's a 2-part Outsider story from this same creative team in Urban Legends.
It's not the same. There's a different artist.
Is it? I thought it was the same
Tom,
artist.
yeah, I thought it was. I thought I read it was a different artist.
Let me double check.
I
that.
know
You keep talking.
Yeah, I know Thomas is writing it, but I think it's a different artist. But yeah, this is an Outsiders book that I can get with, and just as it was in issue 1, as good as the next Batman was, it was outdone by Outsiders. This again was my favorite story of the 3. Mm-hmm. So yeah, give us more. Give us more of this Outsiders than anything, even if it's in the Future State universe.
Well, you're right. It's Max Dunbar instead of, let's see, who's doing art on this one?
Sumit Kumar.
Yes. Oh man, Sumit Kumar's art on this Outsiders is so gorgeous.
So
like his
good.
layouts and his figures, and the times when Jefferson shows up and he's just surrounded by glory and black lightning. It's amazing. I'm hoping that Max Dunbar is good, but I am definitely going to keep an eye out for Sumit Kumar now, because.
And again, and as someone who is not that deep into anime and manga, I would have loved to have seen this in black and white. This would have been so beautiful if it, because the art style is already there. The only thing that it would have definitely taken away from that gorgeous reveal of Jefferson at the end. But I absolutely love this story.
Yeah, I mean, some people, I think, Steph, you were talking to me offline about how this team is a little small. It's just basically Duke, Jefferson, and...
Was
I think so. I think we talked a little bit.
No, that wasn't me.
Okay.
That is not an opinion I had.
Oh,
in fact, I
it was
like
someone on a
these
different
smaller
server.
teams.
Yeah, I agree, because we just have 2 issues. I mean, really
you just have 2
focusing
issues.
in.
Mm-hmm. And also, I don't like Justice League or Suicide Squad, not because of any fault of their own. It's just with so many characters, I don't know. It takes a lot of talent to bring, and a lot of time to bring attention to their development, to their significance, to write a good story. So, plug anime plug here. My Hero Academia does that decently well, where you have a billion different characters, but they do a decent job of presenting each of them. Whereas this, you had 2 issues with 3 established characters, but who have obviously gone through some very hard times and are new people now. And I don't know. I think 3 is good, and it was a wonderful team, and I liked it.
Yeah, and in my opinion, what makes a book like Justice League work, and I say this not counting what we're going to be getting with Brian Michael Bendis, but the reason why they work in a way that it does, even with all of those characters, is for the most part, each of those characters have their own book. Batman has his, Superman has his, Wonder Woman had. So there's a lot more pages where you can develop the character without covering it in the pages of Justice League. You couldn't do that with Outsiders, because again, these were the nobodies of Gotham. And so, in Hill's run, they added Caliber for a time being, and then once he was gone, then they brought in Shiva. It was just too many to actually develop the story after they rescued what's the name from Roz. And I had very high hopes for that book, considering it was Brian Hill writing it, but the number of characters just took away from the ability to tell a good story for each of them. But this does it. I need more Brandon Thomas on Outsiders, and I'm happy we're at least getting another two backup stories.
I just found out that Sumit Kumar is the artist for the Man Bat story, which is actually the most excited I got for Man Bat.
Because no one's excited for Man Bat.
Well, some people are, just not me. But I'm excited
just
for
not
his
us.
art. So if you are liking
I might
this
have
art,
to give it a try now.
I know, right? I think I'm going to have to try it too. All right. So, final story on this is Arkham Knights.
Arkham Knight Dawn, written by Paul Jenkins, art by Jack Herbert. At the Gotham shipyard, some goons working for the Penguin are quickly trying to load a shipment into the back of a truck before the magistrate arrives. They're too late, however, as drones and cybers led by Peacekeeper 6 arrive, swiftly taking them out. Peacekeeper 6 allows one to leave, however, to send a message to the Penguin without his teeth. Beneath the former Wayne Manor, Astrid Arkham, the Arkham Knight, is plotting her next move with a group of followers. She scolds Oz for disrespecting her first lieutenant, Two-Face, who's trying to provide details on their next mission. He warns of the new Peacekeeper responsible for Midtown, speaking of Peacekeeper 6, and the weapons she brought with her. The Knights are heading straight in her direction. Little do they know that Peacekeeper 1 knows this, and he has a team ready to protect the armory of weapons. The battle ensues. As the two sides go back and forth, Dr. Phosphorus falls, his condition getting worse and worse and more unbearable. Astrid once again promises to find a cure for her friend. The Knights make their way through the first line of magistrate defenses and find themselves face to face with Peacekeeper 6 and more magistrate troops. At this time, an aircraft approaches from behind the magistrate troops, but this isn't magistrate reinforcements. It's an aircraft stolen by the Knights. As the magistrate is distracted, Astrid and the others head inside the old Gotham police station and not the armory. This confuses everyone, including Peacekeeper 1, who is listening from afar. The Knights make their way to the roof of the GCPD building, where the copter is waiting for them. There, they attach an old bat signal to the cables before they begin to depart. Peacekeeper 6 and the magistrate have arrived, however, to Astrid's dismay. Peacekeeper 6 shoots Dr. Phosphorus. This infuriates the Arkham Knight, who jumps from the safety of the helicopter to attack Peacekeeper 6, driving her sword through the magistrate's torso. Back at the Knight stronghold, Dr. Phosphorus lies in surgery. As this is going on, Astrid joins the rest of the Knights on the roof of the manor, where they are standing by the signal light that has now been retrofitted to look like a sun. She flips the switch, shining the light above Gotham. The sun has finally risen.
Okay, so does this story feel like it's leading to anything or answering any questions we had from the last issue or why this story exists in the first place?
I had the vomits this week, so I chose not to read this story.
You're a lucky woman.
I skimmed through it and decided vomiting was a better use of my time. Is that too harsh?
You're a lucky woman.
I would not say that was too harsh. I think this issue...
Let me just say, if this was a visual right now, if you guys were watching us live on YouTube or something like that, at this point in time, I would probably just post up the GIF of Tracy Morgan doing the whole thing. No, hell no. No, it doesn't answer anything. It doesn't address anything. It doesn't complete anything other than the fact that Astrid finally gets her damn son from the detective arc, from Peter Tomasi. terrible. This was just, and again, after giving Jenkins some credit for the first story, I was one of the very few people, probably the only one, who didn't hate the first chapter. This chapter was terrible, and I just can't get over how terrible it was. So yeah, to answer your question, Ian, just throw in and throw up or just throw in the whole Tracy Morgan gif. No, hell no, nope.
So I thought Dr. Phosphorus, so I did skim it, right? I looked at the pictures to see if I could figure something out without reading anything. Isn't Dr. Phosphorus just bones and nuclear flame? Like, how can he get shot? How can he be sick? Like, whatever.
Maybe this is following up with Tom King's Dr. Phosphorus story.
I was gonna say, at least if we follow Tom King's line of everything, we know, I guess, Phosphorus survives this surgery, long enough to where he kills Batman. But who cares?
Who cares?
Not me.
As good as much as I like the art wasn't good enough to save this story. It's so just terrible.
Wow, this is garbage.
It probably would have been better if Peacekeeper 6 have driven a sword through Astrid instead.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's a bad story when you would just wish the villain would win. When I watched Jeepers Creepers, I was so happy that the guy died at the end. I was like, ugh, couldn't you have killed him at the beginning of the movie? It would have been a shorter film.
All right. So
it would have been nice. Maybe Zod. It would have been nice if Zod would have turned at that point and cut her head off or something. I don't know.
that's a really good point. I'm still not okay with Zod being on the good side in this and Batgirls.
No, yeah.
Because again, this is the problem when you take something that was meant to be 6 months at least long. There is just so much missing, and it doesn't make any sense. And it's like you're saying, there is no universe where Victor Zsasz is anything other than who he's always been.
Well, maybe Earth 3, but that's like when he's reversed.
Right. But I gave this story a chance in thinking that in the second chapter he would turn and show his true colors. But no, it didn't happen. So this is the problem when you take something that was meant to be longer and you nitpick, and just, it's terrible. Terrible across the board. No, nope, no, hell no. No. I'm muting.
Well, I want to give the next Batman number 3 an overall rating. So combining next Batman number 3, Outsiders number 2, and Arkham Knights number 2, what would our overall rating out of out of 5 lightning powered katanas be?
Ooh.
If you would have said out of 5 sun signals, I would have dropped the call.
I am not so cruel.
I really, really liked the second story, and I did not read the third story. So I would give this, I don't know, a 4, maybe? I'd say a 4, because I'm choosing to ignore that the third story exists, and the first one was good. I liked the first one, and the second one was amazing. So 4. If
the third story, if the Arkham Knight story was not there, this would be a 4. But because it's there, it's a 3. That one story
full point off. I can't disagree with you. That is a very frustrating story, but man.
And again, remember, I gave the first issue a 4 because I appreciated all 3 stories, including chapter 1 of of the Arkham Knight, but this was bad enough. Like I said, even as good as the art was, it wasn't enough to save how much I just loathed getting through the pages of that, and I couldn't have finished it as quick as I did. It was just a shame I had to read it twice to do my review. So yeah, 3 out of 5.
I want to know if I should follow in Steph's footsteps and just ignore Arkham Knights or not.
Do it. Live in denial with me. It's lovely. We have cookies.
I will say that second Outsiders story was so good that I'm going to keep my rating at a 4. So I'm going to say that my rating without would be a 4.5, but I'm going to say it drops it half a point because of that Arkham story. So I end up with a 4 out of 5 lightning katanas. And that gives us median mode of
Oh my gosh.
4.
Just average, dude. Just do average.
But average would be 4 plus 4 plus 3 divided by 3, which is too much math for me.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
If you want to do that math, you can. All right, so we're going to do a quick review promotion, which is if you have thoughts on these issues or our commentary, please leave us a comment on Twitter. Join our Discord, which you can find on our website with a nice new Discord logo. And leave us some comments. We'd be happy to read them on the air. We also would love some reviews on Stitcher or iTunes. Feel free to leave us some feedback there. We also, of course, have our classic email of tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net. So any of those will reach us, and we'll be happy to read those on the podcast. We did get a comment from Sean Wolf saying that he thanks us for another wonderful episode. He truly enjoys our reviews and those of our team, so that'd be you, Theo, and Steph. The Future State series sounds interesting, but he's looking at these as an Elseworld series. I think that's very wise.
That's fair.
But
yeah.
we do have an ongoing series now, so that'll be interesting to see what our readers think of that. Sean ends by saying, still, I can't wait to read those stories. Happy New Year. So thanks for commenting, Sean. We always appreciate that. And on to our second review of the podcast, which is Dark Detective number 3. The first story is Games, written by Mariko Tamaki, illustrated by Dan Mora. Carl Bennington, billionaire and supporter of the Magistrate, is murdered, and Bruce Wayne suspects he threatened the Magistrate's control of Gotham. Bruce spreads literal nets around Gotham to capture the nano-drones he discovered last issue, but triggers larger combat drones to chase him. As he flees, he runs into Tim Fox Batman, and after a brief confrontation, the two head their separate ways. Bruce hacks into the few nano-drones he captured which didn't self-destruct, and gains access to a huge database of footage of everything in Gotham, including finding out that peacekeepers were the ones who killed Bennington. Before he can go further, his landlord's daughter causes a conflict since her father's paranoid fantasies are drawing local attention. Suspicious at her concern, Bruce follows her, discovering that one of her jobs is a magistrate headquarters. But despite her important position, the magistrate has 6 drones following her. The issue ends with Bruce hearing the magistrate's forces coming for him. So, did we learn anything big about Bruce and Tim Fox with this meeting between the old Batman and the next Batman?
Well, they obviously don't know who the other is, and Tim has no idea that the old Batman is still alive. I don't know if anything big was really revealed. Would have been nice if they had worked together, but whatever.
Yeah, it's obvious they don't know who each other is. At least we know Jace doesn't know who Bruce is, considering how he's talking to him. I don't know. Again, this is just one of the problems with Future State, because I would have loved to have seen, like Steph said, them work together. I know we get a little bit of that with Nightwing that we looked at in Greater Gotham a while back, but it would have been nice to see more interaction than these two. At the way it was written, it added absolutely nothing to the overall story. You hear, get off the streets, you know what they'll do if they catch you and stay home tomorrow. Really? And so, yeah, okay. Okay.
One thing because I've kind of been reflecting on myself, like, why do I like this almost non-story story? And I think I really appreciate when we get the boring, nitty-gritty, like, moment by moment stuff. Like, this isn't all the exciting stuff that Batman does every day. This is his process. And so, yeah, that meeting with Tim wasn't very exciting, but it still happened, and it's still something that might have happened. And yes, it wasn't a big thing, but it's still part of the process, part of his reveal, part of his exploration. I agree mostly with Theo, though. It was somewhat the waste of space. It didn't add anything to the story other than to show that they know each other is alive, but they don't know who they are, so it doesn't really matter. But so it might be important, but I do like that we are kind of getting the detective process here rather than just bomb, explosion, exciting thing, important interaction, plot progression. It's boring detective work, and I think in something called the Detective Comics, you kind of have to be okay with that.
I liked that sort of putting the clues together and Bruce painstakingly reconstructing evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder a bit, though, do you think Bruce should be quite as surprised as he is that there is so much surveillance and technology? Does it feel like Bruce is a bit too trusting and he has lost his criminals or a cowardly and superstitious lot paranoia?
I don't know if he has. I just think he's just surprised at how high tech and how just pervasive the surveillance is. I don't necessarily know if he's naive. He's super low tech right now, and he's doing the best he can. And I think he's just a little surprised, is all.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's degraded any. I think it's just that the magistrate is a step or two ahead of him, and we see that, in those last few panels when he realized that they've always had their eye on him with those drones. So yeah, I don't think it's. I think it's more of them being one or two steps ahead than Bruce falling down a step or two. Now again, he could still be having issues from getting shot and almost drowning and dying, but I just think it's more of, and he kind of mentioned it himself, with how, every time he's tried to capture one of those nano drones, they've upgraded, and he's always had to try to do something else to try to be able to capture one. And it's just the point of the magistrate just being one step ahead because they have the resources to do so, and he doesn't.
Any other questions that you think we should ask on Dark Detective number 3?
Dan Moore.
His art is indeed pretty fantastic, and the coloring continues to be really cool. I especially like the way they make Bruce's eyes so pale. In such a dark story, his eyes being so pale are really kind of a dramatic effect.
Especially in that last panel, he looks almost as crazy as the old guy he's staying with.
That is true. He does have that kind of conspiracy theorist living in his basement, which he kind of is, except that all his conspiracies are true.
What is it? It's not paranoia if everyone does hate you. If they're out to get you.
I'm really enjoying this series, much more than I thought I would. So that's, I think, really good.
The only question is, do they bring it back to the main story once I
really hope they have this
March
energy.
Comes around.
It's a question I kept for Detective and forgot. From Batman it's in tech that Nakano was voted in, and they sort of set up this whole drama, and then they scooched ahead a few years in the future. But when we go back, is Nakano still gonna be there? Is that still gonna be a storyline? Is tech gonna kind of glide into this universe, or is it going to choose to ignore it, and this is just literally going to be an Elseworld that never happened, and Nakano's a great guy and everyone happily ever after? Like, what's going to happen in tech?
So we know from solicitations that Nakano is going to be mayor, and that is going to be an ongoing plot line. I think we also know that the idea of the magistrate is going to come up, but my guess is that this is going to remain an alternate timeline. I think they're going to be able to defeat the forces that are attempting to create the magistrate in the present. That's just my theory now.
Because it would be interesting to see somewhere, like, how the heck Nakano lost it.
And do we know how far once we get to March, do we know how far Tech will be once we go back to the main storyline? I mean, are they going to be picking up right after the election, or will it be a few months down the line?
That's a really good question. I don't think we've gotten a preview.
Will the Bat Cow still be living in the townhouse in the middle of Gotham? It's the only thing I want to know. It's the only thing I care about.
Oh, what about Alfred the cat? Don't you care about Alfred the cat?
Well, him too. All the animals, but mostly the cow.
Okay, as long as we're being equal
animalistic.
Care. Yes, equal opportunity for animals. All right, so we're going to move to Grifter's No Future Past, which is the second part and finale of this story, written by Matthew Rosenberg, illustrated by Carmine Di Giandomenico, one of my favorite artists. It starts with Huntress leaping down on Cole Cash, the grifter, and they fight. Helena is still angry from their last encounter, but Luke intervenes, offering again to pay Huntress to help him get out of Gotham. However, they were followed, and Huntress is forced to blow up her hideout to get away from the large force of magistrate troops. Grifter manages to blow up some fuel barrels to destroy a helicopter following them, but the Blast Mask gang approaches, stunning Cole with a taser. They once again pay to avoid conflict and arrive at the Gotham sewers, where Huntress has a stealth submarine to transport Luke to safety. The magistrate arrives, and shockingly, Luke has betrayed Huntress to them. He tries to put Cole in the submarine to get him to safety and out of the way, but Cole decides to save Huntress instead, freeing her from the Peacekeepers and forcing her onto the sub. The Peacekeeper, badly injured, takes Grifter prisoner. To Luke's fury, but Cole isn't too worried about his ability to escape eventually. So, questions. How did the twist that Luke actually was betraying the Huntress to the magistrate work for you?
It ruined the whole story! What the heck? Like, what did Huntress ever do to Luke? Seriously. And it just seems like Luke is such a different character than he is in Batman. I was confused and mad, and I had to reread it, and then I still didn't believe what I read, and I was just pissed. The end.
Yeah, this has been my one problem with all of Future State, in the fact that the timeline is just jumping all over the place. And so, we don't know where. I mean, I would assume that this story is somewhere down the line from the next Batman. But it's just one of those things that I don't like about the jumping back and forth of the story, in that in the end you spend too much time trying to connect the dots or to connect the time points of the stories than reading the stories themselves. So, I mean, the reveal was a little of a shock, but on a reread, and not just of this story, but also the first chapter, you can almost see it coming, considering how much of a dope Luke appears to be in this. I mean, he's afraid to fight back. He knowing that he can, and the story was good, but it's because there's just so many plot holes and trying to connect the timeline. It takes away.
Because of who Luke is, like, I confess I probably know Luke the least of the three of us. But from what I've seen and what I've watched in the movies and stuff, like, there has to be a daggum good reason why he did this, and we literally have zero idea what his motivation is, other than he didn't mean to get Grifter. which, I mean, good for him. Like, we just literally don't know what put Luke in such a tight spot that he decided that this was the only option. And it's just, I wish we knew.
And if I can remember from the first issue of the next Batman, he seems to have already given up the mask, so he's not Nightwing anymore. But then again, that kind of makes you wonder if this is before or after 2. I mean, it's just, it's so confusing.
It is very confusing.
I agree.
Ian, how did they,
I agree.
I was going to say, how did they ruin your
This
friend?
wasn't quite the Luke I wanted. I do feel like I could definitely consider some things, like they could be threatening, like, Tiffany's college or something if Luke didn't help them. So it's not that I think this is unredeemable, but I definitely think it suffers because it's not intuitive and it doesn't feel like Luke at all, even as Luke is set up earlier where he seems to be really concerned with justice and trying to do the right thing. That being said, I really loved the action. Carmine's art just made it really kinetic, even though there were some writing weaknesses, like the fact that a lot of fights seemed to be solved by Luke just paying people. That's not super dynamic. I am just I'm a sucker for the Huntress. I just love her character almost as much as I love another purple-clad vigilante. And I thought she was pretty well written, and I'm very excited to see her coming back to prominence in Detective Comics. She's going to get a backup starting in April. And so I'm very excited to see her becoming an important part of the universe again after almost like 2 years of just any significant content featuring her. I mean, she did pop up every now and then as a cameo in Tom King's Batman, but ever since the Hellblazer run by Tim Seeley, she really hasn't done anything important, which is disappointing because she's such a rich character.
Didn't like her high-tech mask. It was awful. Like, the best part for me in the comics was when her mask broke, and I was like, oh, good. She's got her regular mask on underneath. I did not like that thing.
Well, I don't know. I thought the high-tech mask was cool, but...
No, it looked weird.
I don't know. It wasn't like something I'd want to be forever, like her new permanent look, but I thought it was a cool piece of gear for her to have sometimes. All right, let's go for ratings on Dark Detective number 4 out of, let's see, 5 mini drones. How many mini drones will we give Dark Detective?
As much as I hated Luke's turn, like I still think I enjoyed the overall story, and I really like Tech. So I might have to give this another 4 out of 5. This was I did not choose to vomit instead of reading either of these stories. These were both very good. 4 out of 5, I think.
I would give it 3.5.
I'm also going to give it a 4 out of 5. I think that the writing, even though there are a few holes in both stories, is really supported by fantastic art, and it uses characters that I think are really interesting. So, a 4 out of 5 for me on Dark Detective. Which is a good week for us. I mean, we have a pretty decent rating despite a couple holes. So let's move on to Crater Gotham. We have 2 stories coming out. Harley Quinn, both of them are Future State. So Future State Harley Quinn number 2 and Future State Robin Eternal number 2. What are your guys' thoughts on Harley Quinn number 2?
I was a little disappointed just because it seemed, I don't know, I didn't understand how Harley got away in the end. But I did appreciate her messing with Crane and her kind of manipulating him, even though I didn't quite understand how that happened or how that worked or why Crane went crazy again. But I did appreciate seeing Crane miserable because he's a baddie and I don't like it when he's happy. I think overall I enjoyed it. I like the art. I know I'm alone on that one, but I really, really love the art. I didn't like it quite as much in this issue. It didn't seem as refined or polished as the first issue. Overall, I like that issue.
Well, I think the artist actually switched. I think there were a couple fill-in pages, which explains why it didn't seem as consistent.
Yeah, definitely then.
I mean, it was okay. Again, I'm always going to be the biased one, not being a fan of Harley. Don't at me. Yeah, it was okay. I'm a little perplexed at how she was able to just manipulate Crane into putting on the Scarecrow mask again and basically using that against him. But it was okay. I think I probably enjoyed Black Mask more than anything with how ruthless he was. That was gruesome.
I really like the writing on this because it showed Harley is very Silence of the Lambs, but with Hannibal not being like kind of reversed, where Harley is sort of a Clarice, even though she's a mad former criminal. She's really kind of the heroic character in this, and Scarecrow, of course, is a serial killer. So seeing that in reverse, I just like the way that Stephanie Phillips, the writer, played with the tropes. I do agree with Steph that the art wasn't as good, even though I wasn't as big a fan of the art last issue. But I am interested in seeing what happens going forward. I still am frustrated that all the promotion for the Harley series is seeming to be about Harley and Ivy being in a romantic relationship, and I really feel that they need to put the same work into Ivy that they've put into Harley before I think that Ivy is any better for Harley than Joker. I mean, Ivy and Joker are both mass murdering criminals, and Ivy's power allows her to kill people at just huge scales. And unless they're willing to show her having the same kind of moral awakening that Harley has had in Sam Humphrey's Harley Quinn and in Tynan's Batman, I'm worried that this is going to be another romanticization of an abusive type of relationship between someone who has a moral center but is attracted to people who are abusers and killers. So I'm concerned about that. I'd rather have more stories where Harley is, seeking to both be an agent of chaos, but also an agent of chaos that kind of helps other people rather than just destroying. And I worry that they're not going to really address the problems inherent in a Harley and Poison Ivy relationship. So our other Greater Gotham book is Robin Eternal, and this wraps up the story of Tim Drake, and it also, interestingly, has Stephanie Brown being captured, which the editor's note says leads directly into the Batgirl story.
Yeah.
So, Steph, perhaps you could share your hesitation there.
I definitely like this one better than the last one, even though resin is toxic and you should not ingest it, even if it is Ross juice, because it's not good for you. But
Hashtag
whatever.
Ross juice, everyone get it trending.
But anyway, aside from that, it was fine. It was, they had to wrap it up quick. Again, only 2 issues to do this. And yeah, I would have been fine with it, except for the thing what happened with Steph. Like in the Batgirls thing, they made it sound like this was a big setup. Steph had betrayed everyone. Oh, it was I can't forgive you for what you did. It's like, what? She got captured helping Tim. How is what? Anyway, Steph didn't do anything wrong, and there's nothing to make everyone mad. I don't understand. Whatever. That's the only... That little editor's note made me more upset and ruined the story. Everything else was fine.
Yeah, I think if the editor's note had not been included, everything would have been fine with this story. Because again, I'm still trying to figure out what it is that made Steph the traitor. How she, at the detention center, she's more sided with Ivy and Croc and Two-Face. Yeah, she sided with those. What the hell happened? And if you're going to tell me that it was in the pages of Robin Eternal, I'm laughing at you because it didn't. It's just, I don't know. Maybe something happened once she got to the detention center.
Maybe.
I don't get it, and that just because again, I was hoping that it would have been discussed here, and it wasn't, and that was quite disappointing. Now, taking that away, I thought everything else was pretty damn good. I would like to see more of Tim and Darcy in action. I really like Darcy. I wish she could have been introduced.
She was a really cool character.
Yeah, I wish he could have been introduced into the universe sooner rather than later. But the rest of the story was good, but I just couldn't get over the fact that, we still don't know what happened with Steph to give her the name to give her that moniker of a traitor. And it's just disappointing that as of yet we still haven't gotten that. But again, that's the problem with Future State.
Well, I have two things that I'm going to say about Steph as traitor, since I am slightly invested in Stephanie Brown's studies. The first is, I think that it's very easy to see something like Steph betrayed some of her knowledge so that some of the heroes were captured because of her when she was captured. And that was as a plan. Somehow she communicated with Nightwing or something. I think it's quite easy to imagine that she communicated with Nightwing and betrayed some people to get them on the inside to help them in their search for the Bat that we found out in Batgirl's #1. So I'm not too bothered by that, and I'm actually really happy to kind of know that Robin Eternal takes place before Batgirl, so we at least have some sense of the timeline, although I have no real idea of where the timeline goes in terms of where this fits with the next Batman and Dark Detective. We do know that it has to be before the Nightwing series because Barbara Gordon is free in that series where she is captured in Batgirls. So that's another piece of the timeline sequence that we have. Out of universe, my comment is that I don't think that Ayala did their research. They didn't coordinate with Fitzmartin, so they didn't find out what that was. They didn't structure the story well, so that it would have been so easy to just throw in a line where you said, you betrayed people and they're in here with us now. That's concrete, and it would have been one line. They could have even shown a panel of her doing that, just rattling off names to a magistrate peacekeeper. Wouldn't have taken much space. That kind of coordination really should have happened, and it's kind of a piece with the lack of connection to either Cassandra or Stephanie's backstories in the Batgirl story. So I kind of just think that there was plenty of room to make this a tighter handoff between Robin Eternal and Batgirls, and I tend to be more frustrated with the Batgirls piece of that puzzle.
There needed to be more than an editor's note.
I think if they'd just shown a little bit more in Batgirls issue 1, we wouldn't need it. And maybe they'll show more in Batgirls issue 2, but I kind of think they're going to focus on just going forward based on the way the story was structured in the first issue. So that's our Greater Gotham. I think that Greater Gotham, the Batman titles have definitely been consistently interesting. Maybe not always entirely high quality, but definitely interesting. And I'm still pretty invested in Future State, though I will be glad to get to main continuity in March. So I think it is, despite the fact that it leaves our stories a little truncated, kind of the right length. I wouldn't want it to be longer than 2 months at this point.
Yeah. And I do think that, and this is a little frustrating to say, because I think I'm the one who's like, oh yeah, weird weird progression of storytelling. I enjoy it. But when it's all different books and you have to be reading all the books to fully understand what's going on, and there's a weird timeline, that's a little too much. I feel like once this is all collected, and if either they put it in chronological order or at least they collect it so that you can at least get the whole story in one sitting, that'll help. But as it is now, I don't know how this works. I just don't know how anyone could fully enjoy this as it is currently presented. I am enjoying it, but I think I would enjoy it more knowing what the crap is going on.
Yeah, this is definitely not No Man's Land or Nightfall, where going from issue to issue, they really fed into one another. This is just, again, the stories are really good. Future State definitely has promise, but the one thing that just truly takes away from it being completely enjoyable is the fact that you can't pinpoint. You spend more time trying to pinpoint where this story is in the timeline and where that story is in the timeline, and instead of actually enjoying the story.
Have any of you been reading Titans? Like, does that add anything to the story? I tried, and I just got really frustrated with it.
I read
a few pages.
I didn't understand it, and I think that from what I have read, Titans, Shazam, and Flash are actually similar to the Gotham books in that those three are really heavily coordinated with each other, but this was so badly marketed that very few people knew that until now, when we're 3/4 of the way through Future State. So I would have to go and read Shazam and The Flash, neither of which I've read, nor am I super excited about reading. I will say, though, that of the other Future State books, I have really been impressed by Ram V's Swamp Thing, Becky Cloonan, Michael Conrad, and Jen Bartel's Immortal Wonder Woman, Joelle Jones' Wonder Woman with Yara Flor, and Philip Kennedy Johnson and Mikkel Janin's Worlds of War. I've enjoyed all of those. Interestingly, I've also just named all of the original character versions of Diana Prince and Clark Kent, as opposed to some of the replacement ones, although Yara Flor is quite fun.
Yeah, Yara Flor is really good. My only concern, as we now know that she's going to have a regular series, is whether the fact that Joelle doing the writing and the drawing will cause the book to suffer some. And I think that might have been what was the ultimate issue with the story in Catwoman. I just hope it's not the case once she gets on the regular series.
We'll just have to wait and see. But I also hope that we have some of these high-quality stories continuing to high-quality mainline runs. I do want to highlight our patrons. You guys support us and keep us on the web. We also have a bunch of affiliate links if you want to shop at Amazon, Lego, Comixology, a lot of others, including Things from Another World. Our Bat Fan Appreciation Wall is people who have contributed at a certain level of our Patreon or through, I think, PayPal. And that is Gerald Green, Joshua Lappin-Bertoni, Rob O, Real No Deuces, Tim Garassi, Robert Lewis, Stephanie Mounts, Donovan Morgan Grant, Stanton's Grave, Donald Townsend, Ed Grouse, Theodis Wright, Hannah Garr, Captain America, Mary Garrett, Austin Davis, Johnny McCloskey, and Brendan Roberts. Thank you all for contributing and keeping us going with the Batman Universe Comic Podcast. If you are on Patreon, please send us some messages or comment on our posts there with things you'd like to see as patrons. We'd be happy to consider them and produce that content. That brings us to an end of Future State number 3 of 4. We will see you in 2 weeks for the finale of all this future stating. Until that time, I have been Ian.
And this is Steph.
And this is Theo.
Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.